Tell me about your vision, please.
So, my vision is to help destigmatize mental health issues, but also issues around almost everything in life that we stigmatize or stereotype, and promote more understanding of each other and, quite frankly, more love for each other. And how I got that was is I had a very abusive childhood, and in my late 30s I experienced and I went into a career in law enforcement and as a volunteer firefighter. So I eventually experienced what I call an inevitable mental health crisis. It was coming. I was my life had set me up for that. And I realized during that time, and afterwards I guess more, that when I was suicidal, and I had been suicidal for a few months, and I was abandoned by all the people around me in various ways, however that shows up, like being too scared to ask me, not recognizing the signs, whatever it might have been. And I realized that I had almost died because I was too scared to ask for help because of the stigma around mental health.
Mm.
And that is incredibly ridiculous
Mm.
because I found out later in my healing journey that we all experience mental health at some degree eventually in our lifetimes. And so why would I die from something that stupid? And when people die from ridiculous ways, like the Tide Pod challenge, we all find out about it immediately and be like, be aware of this, right?
Mm.
Or engineering safeguards come into play and we prevent that. And so people are dying needlessly. It's completely ridiculous. And in 19 years in my career, I worked with 6 guys, men, all high achievers, until they weren't, and then they died from suicide. And some of them were really good friends of mine. So that is that stigma part of it for mental health specifically. But then, as I kind of was on my journey and I started thinking about this a lot more, I realized something else. And that is I'm a white farm boy. And even though I had a lot of trauma in my life, I was only stigmatized for a couple of years.
Mm.
And a lot of people wake up in the morning and walk out of their house and are stigmatized or stereotyped immediately. And that happens their whole life. And I it's not right. And we're doing so much damage to each other just by not, refusing to understand what someone else might be going through and then perpetrating stereotypes. And I've been guilty of that myself.
Mm.
But once I realized, how harmful that is, I've always been interested in people's story, and I've always been accepting of other people, even when it's uncomfortable for me, because sometimes you're in situations where like, whoa, like I do not understand this and it's uncomfortable. But when you get to know people and you hear their story, even if you don't agree with what they're doing or their opinions, you can have more, understanding and empathy, and there's more love in the world, and there's just a whole lot more, I guess, cooperation with each other.
Mm.
And but yeah, so that's kind of my vision, is to just, and I know it's a huge one, it's a big task, but just chip away at it every day a little bit.
Like, where are you going with your vision? I know you can talk about your business and what you're doing there.
So it started with just making posts on social media, um, and then that's when I really realized how many people are struggling in silence, because I would get messages from people that wouldn't like or comment on what I'd posted,
Mm.
but a private message telling me how much it had helped them,
Mm.
or asking for advice or asking for help in some way. And so I started doing that. I've started public speaking. I tell my story to people. I give them hope and I show them, because I was at rock bottom. And when I told the person closest to me that I was suicidal, they literally walked out of the room on me. So literal physical abandonment again, which triggered a lot of childhood stuff.
Mm.
But so I've started public speaking because I've realized that it helps a lot of people just hearing my story.
Mm.
I recently started a podcast called True Emotion Dad, where I talk about the hard stuff. And I don't hide from anything and I don't mask anything because I want people to hear the truth, because there are other people out there that are suffering at that level. And if I only tell a superficial version of my story, it's not going to help them.
Mm.
And so that's why I bare my soul when I tell my story, is because I want people to know that they're not alone in their struggle. So I'm doing the podcast.
Mhm.
Just started that. It's a lot of fun. I get to meet some amazing people, and I'm working on a clothing line that spreads the message of hope and love for everyone. Even, we don't have to agree with anybody, but if you can love them at just some kind of level and promote that understanding
Mm.
of where they're coming from, then we help the world. I believe.
Yeah, I think you're right. That's amazing. How long has this been, like, how has your business, you know, how has it gone so far? How did you get, I'm gonna just put, how did you get started? But like, kind of looking at that, how's it going?
Well, a lot of learning lessons along the way, um, which some people might call failures, but it's just a first attempt in learning. And I started one previously, I closed it, realized a lot of the lessons I needed to learn there, and some of them were personal growth.
Mhm.
And I'm just recently revamping up, kind of rebranded, revamping up now, and just, taking my time. I don't want to rush anything and make too many big mistakes.
That makes sense. And so, how long have you been recording the new podcast?
About just under 2 months.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's brand new then. That's
Oh
exciting.
yeah. Yeah, it's new. Yeah.
There's a learning curve, right?
Yes, there is.
And then the
Yeah.
apparel line too. How long has that been going?
This new one about the same time,
Okay.
because I started getting the inspiration around the same time, and I had I taken a break just to kind of work on myself a little bit, or actually quite a bit, actually, not just a little bit. There was a lot of work there,
Yeah, I was going to
and
say that's not usually a dip of the toe. It's like you
yeah,
kind of jump in, right?
yeah, yeah. Let's talk about the whole iceberg here. Um, yeah, so like most recently, it's been about 2 months.
Mhm.
I think I've been working like at it in some way probably for 3.5 years,
Mm.
just tinkering with stuff and ideas and whatever.
What would you say success is going to look like, particularly in relation to this business? How can you define that?
That's a hard question because when you first ask me about success, I think of being a good dad and a good person and,
Mm.
living health and, being healthy. Um, there's 100 levels of success for me in this. And I've already achieved success because I've had people email me and tell them how much an episode helped them
Mm.
on my podcast, or how much um, one little thing I said had changed their perspective and helped them see a bigger picture. So that's success for me.
Mhm.
Um, I guess maturely, I don't know, 20 employees, full-time employees. And that's kind of the twist to my dream though, is I'm not like, I want to build, and I'm going to build a big successful company, but it's not going to necessarily be successful on paper, because if I'm making a difference in the world by, selling items that promote love and understanding and, all the happy stuff, then I have to start at home too.
Mm,
And by that I mean is my employees are going to be taken care of very well,
mm,
right? And I don't know exactly how that looks yet, but it's going to obviously minimize some profits. But that's okay for me because I want people to join the same or have the same vision as I do.
mm.
And I don't want to be a millionaire with employees that are working at minimum wage and poor benefits.
Right.
That's not going to be how that looks, right? So
Yeah. Oh, that makes a lot of sense. And, a true win is a win for everybody involved. And
absolutely, I
that's
agree.
so good. That's so important that you see that already, even just, a few months in on this go. That's how will being on this show, like, how does that fit into your goals, your strategies?
It helps spread the message of what I'm doing, and whether it inspires someone else to do the same thing as me
Mm,
or inspires somebody else to come listen to my podcast. For me, it's about just spreading the message of hope and love, and trying to understand people better, and for those that are suffering, that it's you're not alone and you'll
mm.
be okay.
That's huge. That's so good. How old are your kids?
They're 8 and 10.
Oh, that's so good.
They're fun ages.
Yeah, that is fun. Mine are grown, so I'm like, oh, I
Yeah.
remember.
Mhm.
As a dad, and then also like as a business person, how would you define, what makes a great leader?
um, Someone that understands their people,
Mm,
someone that can connect with them on a deep level, and someone who who is trusted and can give trust. Um, when I think of my children, my I guess primary goal with them is to build a really strong connection. And so I have to put a lot of my ideas away sometimes and just to connect with them on their level. And as a leader in a workplace or of, a group of people, they have to trust you. And so therefore you have to be trustworthy,
mm,
and you have to be able to be vulnerable with them, because when you're vulnerable, you show your true self, and then you become trustworthy.
mm,
And looking back over my career, specifically in law enforcement, I don't think I ever once had
mm,
a so-called leader that was vulnerable.
mm.
And I didn't trust my leaders.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
that makes a lot of sense. What would you say about this? Like, with your vision, you're kind of beginning steps, like 2 months in, that's fantastic. You've got a lot going on already, which is exciting. How do you feel about like where you are with your vision?
Um, I think my vision is pretty clear. I've been doing some form of it for several years.
Mm,
Whether it's just, my Facebook or social media posts, just talking about um, mental health, positivity in some degree. I don't want to get into toxic positivity. Um, but yeah, I feel good. If I were to say where I was with my vision, I think the vision itself is pretty concrete. It's just reaching the goals in that vision. So
mm.
it's hard for me to kind of explain that.
Yeah, no, I get you. I think that's it. When you're venturing into something that's not mapped out, it's kind of hard to tell like where you are, how much further you
Mhm.
have, and all of that.
And if there's one thing that I've learned in the last few years, is to not be too rigid in my thinking
Mm,
and kind of go with the flow a little more and be adaptable. And so I'm always just kind of like, this is what I think it is, but I might be throwing a twist, so it might change.
yeah, that seems pretty normal with entrepreneurs. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. And do you have a team that works with you, or just all by yourself?
It's me solo right now.
Mhm.
just taking it step by step. And um, I've had some friends and acquaintances that at varying stages have been able to offer me some advice that has
Mm.
been really helpful. So yeah.
That's great. And then how about for, do you have like, are you funding this yourself? Are you bootstrapping? Do you have something else going on that funds it?
I'm funding it myself. My first endeavor I funded um, by having another contracting business, but that was just too much.
Mhm.
I did I couldn't maintain it,
Mhm.
and so I'm just funding it by myself right now, and just taking it slow because last time I kind of rushed through it and I
Mm.
learned a lot of costly lessons.
Share some of those. I would love to hear like the top 2 that you're like, "Oh boy, yes, never
Oh
again.
man.
Definitely do this."
Um, I was well, one of them is I spent over $4,000
Mhm.
to um, get designed boxes, and I can't remember how many I bought. And it was, I was, well, the biggest mistake or lesson that I learned was I was very ego driven,
Mm.
right? And that blinded some of my better judgment. And so yeah, like I spent $4,000 on, I think it was just over 1,000 boxes with a logo on them,
Mm.
and I might have used 2 of them,
Mhm.
right? And so that was a very unwise decision, and my my intuition was telling me differently, but I overrode it,
Mm.
and so it was very ego driven
Mhm.
back then, and I'm much more malleable now.
Yeah, that's interesting. Do you have another?
Um, hmm. Well, I didn't do enough marketing, and I thought it was going to take off. I didn't understand a lot, and it comes back to my ego though.
Mm.
I thought, oh, this is just going to take off. Like, how can anybody not like this? Right? I missed steps. I
Mm.
missed, like, testing or um, checking to see if there was a market for that. And so that whole kind of ego thing shrouded my better judgment. And I spent a lot more money than I needed to.
How are you gonna, do you know how to do marketing? Are you gonna just figure it out on the fly? Like,
No, when I feel ready, like when I feel that I have like the pieces in place,
mhm,
I do plan on getting some professional advice
mhm,
on how to grow and what areas, to focus on and how to grow and where to go with it.
yeah. And what pieces are these? Like, what pieces do you feel like you need to get in place?
Um, I'm still finalizing some of my clothing line
Mhm,
and just making sure that there's something there for everybody. Some merch, uh, finalizing my processes that I'm going to use to ensure quality, um, you know, affordability, profitability, those kind of things.
mhm,
And if I want to be prepared for best case scenario if it happens, or when it eventually happens, I guess, and do the proper planning and just make sure I've got everything figured out.
what do you feel like you're exploring next as far as the next building block in your business?
Hmm. Well, this morning I spent several hours looking at wholesalers and um, just the process of getting logos pressed onto to clothing.
Mhm,
Um, I do. I am exploring more female apparel,
mhm.
and I do have a really good friend that's going to be helping me with that because I do not understand women's fashion, and
Same.
probably probably a good thing that I don't. I don't know. And so I'm exploring that, and I'm exploring collaboration opportunities with like-minded podcasts and like-minded people, just to, help each other spread the word about what we're doing.
Thank you for being here today. I'm really happy that you tuned in to Vision Pros Live. I'm looking forward to seeing your reactions as these episodes continue to move forward. This is going to get more and more fun. We'll have more and more engagement as well. We'll invite people to participate in the show. And thank you for giving us your time and attention. Have an excellent time building out your vision and becoming a Vision Pro yourself.